Gough to come forward. And we didn't have a sweepstake on your suit colour today, which
Missed out.
I'm sure I would have won. It's like, hello sunshine.
Wonderful. Good thing is I'm here. If I doze off, please just ring the bell.
Are you tired?
Not today. Thank you very much. There are a few points that I wanted to cover. One of them is High Street, which actually has become a very, very important street for Christchurch. There's very few east-west links through the centre city.
Hereford
Street.
That's right.
Very few east-west links. So if you think about it, your nearest one, Cashel doesn't link through. Worcester doesn't. Gloucester doesn't. You've got difficulties with Litchfield Street, so it doesn't link because of the multi-purpose stadium that we hope to see, which I'm very supportive of too. And so Hereford Street will actually, although we don't say it, it will become a major artery for supporting the centre city. Shame at the moment it's a dead-end street that you can't go one way or the other because it's blocked both ends with roadworks and has been all this year, and I think that's absolutely appalling that has stayed that way. I just can't understand it. We do our pours, by the way, at concrete at that middle of the night. We did one at 3 o'clock this morning. We did another one on Saturday morning. We do most of our street work stuff that mucks you all up in the dead of night, but somehow Downers don't seem to be able to do that for you people, which I think is really sad, but we don't put up with it. So what I wanted to talk about was Hereford Street is up for a major upgrade. I applaud the thought of putting it off for a year or two because I think we've still got work going on around there. You're going to have the Spark building going up. We're still building there. We're going to be putting a car park in there next year. So delighted to see it's been delayed, but I'm really concerned that we haven't actually thought about what goes up and down there. We have major trucks, it's a major bus route. Bus 17 is used there, and hopefully we'll see some more buses go up and down there. You're going to have the tourist deliveries happening there, and we don't have anywhere for them tourists to be dropped off with buses. I don't believe the street is wide enough for buses, trucks and cycle lanes. Cycle lanes, Worcester Street is perfectly usable. They cycle over the bridge at the moment, but I can't drive my car over it. So I believe we should be thinking that not every street needs a cycle lane both sides. And Hereford Street is one of those, and I oppose you putting a cycle lane both ways on Hereford Street. Totally unnecessary. The Accessible Cities project, you've had a lot of flack about this. The great thing is that although everyone said it was not able to be, it was cast in stone, it's not cast in stone. It was amazing.
It's concrete. Sorry. I was just joking.
It was amazing when threat that government might withdraw funding, that actually the stone wedges fell out from around the thing. We need to think again about it. The Cambridge Terrace, and I know you're only a party to it, but actually it's a disaster in the way it's taken away a lot of parking for all those businesses there. Really helpful for me, but actually not for the city as a whole. I hate to imagine if I'm caught in an accident somewhere along there and they're trying to get an ambulance to me, because they won't get it there at the moment down Durham Street. So we need to think really carefully about it. Christchurch is 1/3 the size of Stockholm, and yet we keep somehow hearing that Stockholm, we should be just like Stockholm. If we had 900,000, we should be. We don't have it, and we should be thinking hard. 80% of people take their take their cars. You'd like it only to be buses, but it's not a reality. I suggest if I look around the room here, there's very few people in this room who actually took a bike today to get here. 4. So the proportions are probably about right. I just said 80% take cars. So, that's really a good indication of where the market is. And I think we should never forget that. Your New Brighton saltwater pools, totally support. I think poor old New Brighton needs a lot of help. And I see it's listed there, and I'm fully supportive of what you're proposing to do there, and put saltwater pools instead of, I don't know why on earth we're thinking of going to the QE2 Stadium and put a pool there. Put it in New Brighton, for goodness sake. That's where it actually should go. But I'm fully supportive free entry for children under 5 so they can swim. I'd say free entry until they can swim, regardless of age. So if that means if I couldn't swim, I should have free entry until I can swim. And I think that's a really good initiative of councils. Changing Salisbury and Kilmore to two ways, total waste of money. You've allocated $6 or $7 million for that. I don't know why you're doing it. It doesn't need it. In fact, save the money. It's easier to cross a one-way street than a two-way street. If you're worried about crossing roads, I would much rather cross a one-way street. Only comes from one direction. Two-way, they come in two directions. So if you're thinking about safety, one-way street is actually safer for people. Central City Business Association, I'm no longer the chairman of it, so I can speak loudly and voiceably about it and say, for goodness sake, if you don't support the Central City Business Association, then it will die and you'll need to find something else to replace it. Nobody gets paid except for the one executive who's on there part-time, and that's Lisa Goodman. So really important. I see it was cut back to 60,000. You won't get anything out of 60,000. You'll pay a wage and that's about it. We're asking for it to go back to 100,000 until the centre city's got leads to get going, and it'll be a couple of years. And city care shares, well, I can't see why on earth we're holding on to city care. Its primary function these days is to look after your cemeteries. Doesn't get very many contracts in Christchurch. And I'm sorry. I just think it's a strategic asset. Was one, it's been taken off the books. Don't put it back on and see if you can find a buyer or part or all of it. And that was my submission, nice and clean and simple. And I've got 3-point-something minutes left.
You have, and I'll start, because the Central City Business Association continued funding. You're very clear on this, that you see this as a transition proposition, because ultimately the businesses that operate in the CBD want to pay for this themselves.
Yes.
And you haven't got enough people in the CBD at the moment to actually do the business improvement development.
Yes. If we put it to a vote at the moment, I can almost guarantee you'll get a no.
Right.
And so, we don't want to do that.
No. All right. Phil?
Thanks, Anthony. Just for the Central Business Association funding, like on the basis that you've asked for it to go back to where it was, I think, if we take the smaller suburban business areas, for example, like Sydenham and Addington, would you support them getting this kind of support as well?
On a proportionate basis, so if you look at the size of the business population in the centre city and compare it to Sydenham, you probably find it's less than 1/10.
But on a proportionate basis, you'd agree with that?
Proportionate.
Yeah. Thanks, Anthony.
Very good. Any other questions? Aaron?
Yeah, the changing of the one-way streets, what's the feedback been that you've had from others when you've spoke to them about that, the Kilmore and Salisbury?
Well, they can't understand why you're wasting money on it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
It's part of the accessible city.
It's not cast.
It is cast. Well, this is the thing. The Central City Recovery Plan chapter that deals with transport is called an accessible city. It's a chapter in a city plan, in the Central City Recovery Plan that the CCDU led. Council staff were involved, but it was a CCDU-led process. It is embedded in our district plan. So anything that requires to go out to public consultation, we can't just change. So what we're working through at the moment, as you know, on an accessible city, is making changes where we don't need to go back out to public consultation because they're not relevant to the underlying principles of the plan. The plan we've already consulted on changing the 2 streets. So am I right on that, or am I wrong?
You never consulted on changing one-way streets. It was imposed upon us. I'd love you to open the gates and see what reaction you get. Should we be spending money or do we not?
No, can I just ask a question of staff from the back? Aaron, do we have to consult yet on the one-way, the two-way decisions?
Yeah, Kilmore Street hasn't been consulted on yet, I don't think. I think what a lot of people might not understand about the city is that it's been designed as a network. So we have to look at streets beyond the street itself and say what feeds it, where does it go, how does that support the modes of transport. So the city's been designed so that each corridor has a priority for a particular mode of transport. There's a few streets where everything goes down the street. Some are public transport priority, others are cars.
Yeah.
Some have a
But
high
has
cycle
Salisbury
priority.
Street been consulted on to go to?
No, Salisbury Street I think is about to go, and the report's almost ready to put to council, I think, for Salisbury.
All right, so
Yeah,
there you go.
there's some design changes that we want to make to that though, from some of the other learnings from other projects.
Yeah.
Can I just ask that? And the options for those under the consultation is for Kilmore and Salisbury, is one of the options to keep them as one-ways?
No, because that's embedded in accessible city.
Yeah.
Yep.
But what we need to do some work on, and I mean this simply hadn't occurred to me because I assumed it was all consulted on as part of the chapter, but obviously it hasn't been. And if it hasn't been consulted on as part of the chapter, then what we need to understand is whether it is actually embedded in our district plan. So is the one-way, two-way, is that embedded in our district plan? And that's what we need to find out, because if it's not, then we have got the ability to change that in the consultation process.
I've got a feeling it's only in an accessible city, not the district plan, but we just need to confirm that.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Thank you
and
very
thank
much
you very
indeed.
much, Anthony. That's been very helpful.
It's good. You didn't have to ring the bell to wake me up. That's good.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Thanks.
Right.